Good evening, everybody. Thanks for joining our onX Hunt 101 for December. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes to let people roll in and get situated. While we do that, just a couple of housekeeping measures. First up, your audio and video are turned off, so you don't have to worry if you've got kids in the background or a dog making noise or something. We can't see you, we can't hear you, so no worries there. If you do have questions, we do have some folks from our customer support team helping answer questions. So if you do have any questions, that you'd like explained more, use the Q&A feature down below. You have two options to kind of communicate down there. You have the chat and you have the Q&A. Q&A is a better option there. It's easier for us to keep track of everything there. And if you do have to drop off early or something like that, don't worry. This is being recorded and will be up on the onX Hunt YouTube channel within a day or two. We usually are able to get it up. We'll also email everybody a link to the recording. We're also giving away some stuff at the end, so make sure that you stick around for the end to enter that. What am I forgetting?
I think you're pretty good there.
Awesome. So some of the stuff we're going to go over today are membership options. We're going to talk about a premium membership, premium 2-state, and elite membership, what that all gets you. We're going to talk about my location, how to see your location, how to turn on the compass. We're going to go over map layers, offline maps, different map tools. We're going to have some time for Q&A at the end. So if you see something you have a question about that's not listed up there, let us know, but we're going to kind of cover the ins and outs. Oh, one thing I did forget. If you do have questions on your account, so if you have questions about like your billing, password, anything like that, that's a little beyond the scope of what we're able to cover on the class here. We just don't have the ability to go into everyone's account and reset passwords or check expiration dates, things like that. Email help@onxmaps.com and we will take care of that for you that way.
Yep.
And I'm going to stop sharing here. Go ahead.
With that, I was just going to say, if you do email us, we respond within 24 hours. So if you send us anything tonight, by 5 o'clock tomorrow Mountain Time, you'll get a response and we'll get some help.
And I see I forgot to turn the chat on here, so I'm going to do that right now. So the chat is open if you want to just jump in and say, hey, it's Jack from Montana or wherever you're chiming in from. Speaking of, we never did introduce ourselves. I am Jack from Montana. I'm going to be kind of leading the little spiel here. And you are?
Yeah, I'm Connor, part of the customer service team here, originally from Iowa and then live here in Montana.
Awesome. Well, we should be all set to go. So I am going to flip over to my iPad here, and I'm going to pull up the onX app on my iPad. So one moment here, it does lag a little bit on that. That'll be up shortly. So first things first, with the onX Hunt app, you have a couple different options for a membership. If you just have started an account and have logged in for the first time, you're most likely on a trial membership. So that trial membership basically mirrors our premium membership. So you get access to all the map tools, offline maps, state layers, things like that for one state, correct? So that's what the trial does. It's a 7-day free trial. So if you're on that currently, it's going to basically mirror a premium membership. If your trial expires, you go to a basic membership, and the basic membership gives you access to the satellite imagery. You can see your location on the map. You have the option to add like a few markups. I think it's 25 or 50 waypoints and such you can mark up, but it's a pretty bare bones app experience because it is, just that free app experience. To see the real, use of the app, you're going to want to go to a premium or an elite membership. So premium membership, there are kind of two levels within premium. There's a 1-state membership and a 2-state membership. So with the premium 1-state membership, like it says, you get access to one state, the land ownership layers for one state. So for example, if I pull up my map layers right now, you can see I have Montana turned on. You may have whatever state, right? If you have a premium membership and you're not seeing a state, Let me remove it. If you're seeing something like this and you're like, man, I have a paid membership, I'm not seeing any states listed there. You just need to scroll down. You're going to see all the states and Canada listed there alphabetically. We'll get to Canada in a moment. And you may just need to turn that state back on. It can get turned off sometimes by accident or something goofy happens. You just tap on it, turn it on, and I can see I've got Montana there again. Now the premium 2-state membership, like it sounds, you get access to 2 states. So you typically will choose those states at checkout, or if you call us over the phone or something, we'll get that set up for you. If I want to turn on Arkansas, for example, I go in and turn on Arkansas. Now I have my 2 states. With any paid membership, so this be premium, elite, etc., you get access to unlimited offline maps. We'll go over offline maps in a moment here. You can mark up, it's a couple thousand waypoints is your markup limit. 3,000 is the markup limit. And we'll talk about those in a minute. You get access to the tracker and a bunch in weather data and some stuff like that. Now, if you go to the elite membership, that opens up a bunch of other features for you. So first and foremost, elite membership gets you access to all 50 states plus Canada. So if you're using it north of the border, you do have to have that elite membership to access the landowner data we have in Canada. We did have a question somebody sent in earlier about using the app specifically in Canada. So towards the end of the class, we get to the Q&A section. We'll touch on using the app specifically in Canada. So stay tuned for that. You also get access to a few other cool features, like some of our trail camera stuff, TerrainX, few other route builder, a few other more in-depth things we'll touch on a little bit later as we go throughout the course. So that's the kind of the nuts and bolts of trial, basic, premium, and elite. If you're still wondering, we do have some good charts on our website that show the breakdown kind of feature by feature of what you get with each tier. I'd recommend checking those out in our FAQs and places like that. So getting into the actual app itself. When you pull up the onX app on your phone, so once you download it, if you haven't done it already, you can do it from the App Store or the Google Play Store, enter your login information. It's going to pull up a map that'll look something like this. So this is Missoula, Montana, where we're headquartered, where we're coming to you live from right now. And you can see in the middle is a blue and white dot. Now that is my location. That's how I'm able to see where I am. If for some reason you open the app and maybe you're seeing something like this and there's no blue dot there, all you need to do to orient the map back to your location is to tap this little location button in the lower right-hand corner. I've got a little cursor here on my tablet. If you can see that little gray circle moving around. Unfortunately, this mouse doesn't let me change the color of it, so it is a little tough to see, but I'll do my best to kind of highlight where I'm tapping on the map. So I tap that circle, looks kind of like a crosshair. That's going to bring the map back to my location. Go ahead.
Yep. One thing to add with that is it does require the location permissions on your phone. If you click that and it doesn't do anything, it may be that the app just isn't able to access your location. If that's the case, jump into the settings, find the app in there, and then there'll be a switch you can turn on to turn that back on and be able to show you in the app.
Yep, that's typically when you download it the first time, it asks that question. So if you had denied permission, you want to be able to see yourself on the map, you just got to go in and allow it again. So, all right, so I found my location on the map. If I tap this location button one more time, you can see my map has rotated a little bit, and you can see I have what we call like a sight cone, that blue cone or wedge coming off of my blue dot there. If I zoom in a little bit, you can kind of get a better sense. Now, as I move my tablet around, here I'll hold it up for the camera. As I spin that around, you can see my map is moving as well. Whatever direction my device is pointing, that is what's going to be up on the map. Okay, so normally north is oriented up like most of the maps that we're familiar with. But if I want to be able to see what's coming up ahead of me or easily tell what's on my right, what's on my left, unless I'm traveling straight north, I got to do some kind of mental configuring in there, right? So I will put it into this heads up mode is what I kind of call it. Most of the time when I'm out hunting, fishing, whatever, if I want to see if I'm traveling down the road, if I'm hiking and I need to take a certain fork of a trail, or I want to know, hey, on the right side of me, I just saw a herd of elk. Is that public or private? Something like that. So that's how you can have that oriented whatever direction you're facing. That's a common question we get, a feature not a ton of folks know about, but I use all the time, especially when I'm tracking myself, things like that. To get back, I just tap that button one more time, and you see it brings me back to north being up. So if I want to just bring it back to the usual orientation, just tap that button again. A fairly new feature that we've added recently is our improved compass mode. So as you see, when I go into that kind of heads up mode, a compass appears in the lower right-hand corner there. That third button just appeared. If I click that, now you see my dot goes to the bottom of the screen. I've got a compass bearing at the top, where if I move it around, it's going to give me the different kind of heading there. And I've got this kind of grid system extending off of my location dot. And on the left-hand side, I have some yardage laid out. So that's going to give me a sense of, it's kind of like a quick, easy to use rangefinder, where I can take a look at, obviously we're in town here. It's not super applicable to most hunting or outdoor situations, but we'll do the best we can with where we are. You know, if I want to see, hey, how far is it to this corner? I can see, you know, the corner of the street there. I can see, yeah, it's not quite 151 yards just at a glance. If I want to see how far away something is. If I want to know exactly how far away something is, I can tap this rangefinder icon. Again, I'm going in the lower right-hand corner here. This icon that looks like a rangefinder. And I tap that, you can see I have a waypoint icon that shows up kind of on the left middle of my screen. And the bottom half of my gradient line, my grid line there has turned red. If I just tap on that line and drag my finger, that's all I'm doing right now is I have my finger down on this kind of red dot. I'm dragging it up and down. If I want to know exactly how far it is to where these school buses are parked, 166 yards. If I want to mark a waypoint there, I tapped that waypoint icon. Now I go into this menu where I can just hit done and mark that waypoint. If I would have hit edit, that's where I can go in and change the color of it, change the icon of it, give it a name. We'll walk through those steps in more depth in a little bit here. But now I can mark a waypoint on that spot. And let's pretend I had a bull elk that I'd spotted and I need to get closer, but I might have to drop out of sight, or I may have to go around a long way because of the wind or something. But I want to be able to get to an exact spot, maybe on an opposing ridge, maybe down in the bottom of something, wherever. Now I can put a waypoint on where I'd seen that elk and use that to navigate to later. So you can use it a couple different ways. Say, for example, I have an older rangefinder myself. It's great for archery, but it really doesn't range a whole lot past 500 yards or so. Not that I'm shooting that far right now. But let's say I'm glassing a mountain face across from me, and I see a grassy park or a meadow. There's a herd of elk in there or something that I want to pursue. And I know I need to get closer, and I'm going to have to drop down and might have to drop out of sight. I can either, well, I'm not going to rangefind it because my rangefinder doesn't work in this example. But if Connor has a great rangefinder, he could range it and say, oh, that's 680 yards. Let me just exit this and start over. Let's point this in a different direction so we don't get confused. That's not working. Here we go. I can go into rangefinder mode. I can go here, what I say, 680. And there we are. Close enough. And I can mark a waypoint. So now I have that waypoint at 680 yards away. My rangefinder, mine personally, isn't going to range that far, but I can use the base map to say, all right, I can look at the map, I can look at the imagery, I can say, all right, I can place a waypoint down on that park that I found through the imagery. And now I know, oh, that's 682 yards. That's too far away for me to shoot. But if I can find another shooting position that's 300 yards closer, now it's 380 yards, I feel comfortable making that shot with a good rest and, you know, the equipment I have and things like that. So a couple different ways to use it, depending on if you're using it as a substitute for a rangefinder or kind of in addition to a rangefinder. We are going to be adding to the capability of this coming up soon. I can't say a whole lot, but you might be able to read between the lines. There's some cool stuff coming up with this capability next year. So anything I forgot on that stuff?
I think we're good. I've seen some questions pop up though, how you got to that. If you just want to
Yeah.
quickly show that one more time.
Yeah. So one more time. So here we are. I'm at my location. Let me start completely over. So I'm at my location. North is up. To get to that, there's two ways you can get to it. I'll show you the way I do it most of the time, and then I'll show you the other way. So I tap my location button. I go into this heads up mode where I can see my sight cone as I move my tablet. You can see the maps rotating. Now above my location button, there's two buttons. There's our base map button, which mine says hybrid 2D right now. We'll cover that next. Above that base map button is the compass. Tap the compass. Now I'm into kind of our first rangefinder mode. If you notice above the base map button, there's now a rangefinder icon. Tap that. Now as I rotate the map, I'm able to do what I just did and mark waypoints on the map there. If you're not seeing this, you may need to update your app. It is a fairly new feature, so if you haven't updated your app in a while, double check that. Maybe that's causing an issue. But yeah, hope that answered your question there. We do need to move on. And we're going to talk base maps. I'm going to zoom out a little bit and I'm going to move to a more forested area so that you can get a better sense of what we're talking about here. So most people are familiar with satellite imagery. Google Earth's been around for 20 years, pretty close to 20 years now. Without giving my age away too much, I know I was using it in like middle school and high school. So your imagery standard when you open up the app for most folks is going to look something like this. This is our satellite imagery. So as I zoom in, I can see trees, I can see deadfall, I can see things like that. If I move to an area that's not public, you know, you can see it a bit more clearly. Kind of a view people are familiar with is a basic satellite image. So that's one of the options that we give you. You really have kind of three base map options. If I tap on my base map selector button again, I can go over to hybrid. So that is going to overlay topographic lines on top of satellite imagery. Personally, this is what I use 90% of the time and almost 100% of the time when I'm out in the field. So as I zoom in a bit, now I can still see the satellite imagery. I can see the trees. I can see areas where it's treeless. I can find areas where it's scree rock or shale or things like that. But I can also tell, you know, this is a mountain peak here, and I can see the different drainages coming off of it and kind of take a look at the different aspects of what's north facing, what's south facing, what's steep, where are the benches, things like that. If I really want to just get a sense of what the topography looks like, I'm going to go to a topographic map. So this should look familiar to you if you've used like a USGS quad map or, you know, sort of the, I hesitate to say old school because there's still a use for it, you know, but kind of the old school paper maps. So this is what I will use sometimes more when I'm scouting. If I'm scouting out an area, you know, say I'm looking for an elk hunt in September. We know elk like to hang out on benches on the flatter terrain in a, say, on a mountain. Not necessarily that it's flat, but flatter compared to everything else. They don't like to bed on super steep stuff. So I'm going to look for, hey, let me find maybe a north-facing slope that's a little bit benchier, is a little bit flatter. Not a ton in this area, but there are some finger ridges I might take a look at. There are some There's a few benches, a few flatter areas, something like this maybe. Helps me highlight those areas. I use it a lot when I'm scouting spring bear and I just want to look for those south facing slopes to mark them off. So whatever base map you choose, you know, everybody's different. There's no real right or wrong. Whatever makes the most sense to you, whatever's useful to you. Like I said, personally, I use the hybrid most of the time. So you can always switch between those. Those are available to you if you're offline as well. So you don't have to worry about saving one. So you have it for offline use. All three are saved when you're offline. We'll talk about offline maps in a bit. Before we get to that though, I want to talk about some features that are available for elite members only. If you've got this elite membership, you can turn on recent imagery. So that's down at the bottom here. There's just this off and on button. So if I close my menu, I can see in the lower left-hand corner, it's going to tell me date range for when that imagery is taken. It's taken every 2 weeks. So we should be getting a new image for this area here pretty soon. And if I zoom in, you can see, you know, we've got some snow showing up on some of the peaks here. If I go back and just tap in the back arrow where that date is, you can see we had more snow before. Go back another 2 weeks, no snow. So it's kind of cool, you know, as far as tree cover or leaves, not a whole lot changes here in Western Montana in those pine areas or spruce fir tree areas. If I go up to northern Minnesota, for example, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. Then you can kind of begin to see some of the changes in the vegetation. Let me go forward here. So you can see it's starting to get more brown. You can see as the leaves are falling. There were some clouds when that one was taken, unfortunately. So it's another piece kind of the puzzle is how we describe it. You'll notice it's not as bright of imagery or as crisp, I should say, as our regular base map imagery. It's not as clear. That's because it's taken every 2 weeks with a satellite flying over versus like an airplane, how most of the imagery is taken. So it's not as high definition. That's the trade-off. You're getting it more often, lower definition, or resolution, I guess is the word I should use. So it's not meant to replace your base satellite imagery. It's just meant to be another piece of information to help you make a decision. Used it this fall when I was pheasant hunting to see if crops had been taken out. People use it for waterfowl hunting to check water levels. What other uses have you found for it?
I was using them a little bit in the spring for water levels as well, but more just to see like rivers that are blown out and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. So, you know, if you're checking flood stage, things like that, the recent imagery is great for all of that. I'm going to use it in the spring when I'm bear hunting to check snow levels to see if I can get into some of my areas so that I don't waste gas driving an hour and a half, 2 hours and get there and everything's stopped up because there's too much snow. Another imagery option is our leaf off imagery. If I turn that on, this is only available, it's 13 states right now, right?
Yep.
So it's 13 states. They're all east of the Great Plains, east of the Mississippi, for the most part. You can see in Montana, we don't have leaf off imagery available. But if I zoom to Wisconsin, we do have leaf off imagery available. I'm going to zoom in. This looks like it's got some trees. So I've got leaf off turned on right now. This is in Wisconsin again. If I turn it off, you can see the difference. So this was a request we had from a lot of people who wanted a fall or winter image to be able to see, hey, where are the evergreen trees? Where are the deciduous trees? You can see there's a stand of evergreens here because everything's still green. Kind of hard to tell on a normal image. Sometimes people can zoom in and even see like game trails, deer trails, things like that. So that leaf off imagery, it's select states right now. It is an elite only feature. So you do have to have an elite membership for it. We will be looking to add more states. It's just kind of an availability thing for the most part. Some states have it available for us to use and to bring in. Some don't. We could have it for the whole country. I'm sure we would do it. Of course, it's more applicable east of the Mississippi, western states, a state like Nevada, for example, not that there aren't deciduous trees there, just not as big of an issue as it is in Wisconsin or New Hampshire or something, for example.
Now, one good thing to mention too, with both the leaf off imagery and recent imagery, these will be for online use only. So
Right.
when you're offline, running on those offline maps that we'll cover later, you won't be able to turn those on. They're more for the scouting and when you're at home, or if you're just hunting in an area that you have cell service.
Yep. So, imagery, base maps, anything we forgot about?
I think we're good.
Awesome. Let's get into kind of what I consider more of the meat and potatoes of onX. Kind of the reason people get into onX is the layers. So if I go down into my map layers, lower left-hand corner of the app screen, I'm going to tap Hunt Map Layers. I'm going to open up this menu. Your menu should look something like this. Earlier we talked about if you're not seeing any states, you may have to scroll down and turn on the state that you want to see. If you have an elite membership, we often get the question of, hey, I paid for the whole country. Why aren't all the states listed there? Reason for that is mostly a performance issue. If you turn on all 50 states and you turn on Canada, it's just a lot of data for the app to load up. So we recommend having as few states turned on as possible. Generally, anything like 5 or less, you shouldn't really notice a slowdown in app performance. Personally, I think the most I typically have on at once is 3. Most of the time, I just have 1 turned on because I'm only worried about hunting one state. If I'm maybe hunting the boundary of a state, especially if I'm bird hunting and I have an upland bird license or small game license in both states or something like that, or if I would have an elk license in Montana and Idaho and I'm hunting the border or something. Pretty rare, situation overall. Most people are just hunting one state at a time. I just have the one state turned on. But you can certainly have more turned on. Like we said, anything less than 5, you're probably good. If I want to turn on a state, again, all I do is scroll down, find the state I want. I'm going to turn on Minnesota. And you can see it moves up to the top and I see it listed there. If I want to remove a state, I tap on the folder. All I'm doing here is tapping on Arkansas, and then I'm going to hit remove state. That's one way to remove it. The other way would be to go down here where these green switches are and turn a state on or off. Within a state, you have a bunch of different layers. I guess I should back up here. Talk about some of the vocabulary we use. So we have all of these different folders or collections, layer folders or layer collections. We use the terms kind of interchangeably. So your state layers are all going to be listed under your state. There's also nationwide layers that are going to be in these other folders like current conditions, land and access, roads, trails and rec, trees, crops and cover, wildlife layers. We'll dig into some of these a little bit later. Everybody with a paid membership has access to these. So whether you're premium or elite, you'll have access to all of these folders and you can turn layers on and off, and it's going to turn on data that is nationwide. So it's not state specific stuff. We dig into a state folder. We're going to do Montana here. The 3 that are turned on by default are private lands, government lands, and hunting districts. You can see they're highlighted a little bit differently here. That's how you're able to tell that they're turned on. When I turn it off, it looks like that. So if you have a paid membership, we sometimes hear from people like, man, I paid for the membership. I'm not able to see the private lands. What's going on? Oftentimes this layer just gets turned off. So you just have to go back in and turn it on. That's really my recommendation for anytime you're not seeing something you think you should see. Check your layers and see if one got turned off. And anytime you're seeing something and you don't want to see it or you don't know what it is, we'll talk about some of the common layers that cause confusion in a bit here. Go into your layers and turn stuff off until your map looks the way you want it. This is how you can really customize your map to your needs. I almost never turn off private lands, government lands, and hunting districts. They're pretty much always turned on because that's the information, the pertinent information that I need. Within hunting districts, this is one that causes some confusion sometimes. If I tap view options, you can see we have all of these different options for different species in Montana. Deer and elk is selected by default. Your state, I think it's almost every state has this layer. I don't believe Illinois does, because their zones are like their deer is by county. But just about every other state will have these, and they're going to be varying levels of how many hunting districts layers you have. And they may be called something different in your state. They might be deer permit areas, might be deer zones, they may be game management units, they may be hunt areas. Everyone's a little bit different, your state, what they call it. But what we're talking about are those boundaries of those hunting units or districts. If I want to hunt antelope next year, which hopefully I draw a tag, all I need to do is go click on the antelope hunt district. Oh, that is my adaptive touch here. I'm going to move that out of the way with my mouse. I'm going to go click the antelope hunt district. You see that turned on. If I zoom out now, these are the antelope hunt districts I'm looking at. Just to show you what this looks like, if I go back in and change to deer, you can see if you look at the top portion there on my map, you can see how those change. Antelope, bighorn sheep, black bear, deer and elk. So Wyoming's the biggest culprit for this. We hear from folks in Wyoming all the time because they break down their units by species more than just about any other state that I'm aware of. So they'll have, deer units, elk units, antelope units, bison, mountain goat, you name it. So we always hear from folks when it's the Wyoming deadlines for applications, when hunting seasons are open. I believe it's mule deer is set by default in Wyoming. So it's by default, the mule deer units are turned on. If you need to see something different, go into your map layers in the Wyoming hunt areas and change it. Or whatever state you're hunting in, make sure you got the right one selected. I'm just picking on Wyoming because that's the one we hear from the most. A couple other state layers quickly I want to mention. The possible access layer is one that I turn on often. That is private lands that may be open to public access. So those are lands, they may be owned by a timber company, they may be owned by a group like the Nature Conservancy or a local land trust or other nonprofit folks like that. So they're privately owned. It's not National Forest or BLM or something like that, but they often will allow public hunting, fishing, hiking, camping, etc. Oftentimes they do have certain sets of rules. For example, there's a kind of a well-known area outside of Missoula here that allows hunting. I hunt on it fairly often, but it doesn't allow like recreational target shooting like your local BLM or Forest Service land might. Unfortunately, people don't always listen to that. There's quite a bit of recreational shooting that goes on there. But you do want to make sure that you are kind of paying attention to the rules and regulations. A lot of times they'll be, yep, you're cool for hunting, fishing, camping, but no overnight use. Or there's no commercial activity, no cutting of firewood, different things like that, because it is private land and the owner has kind of their rules for how they want their land to be used, but it's a good opportunity to maybe find some other access to some other areas where you can recreate. So take a look at that, do your homework. Check with the landowner or the managing kind of agency if it's a group like the Nature Conservancy or something, and check on the rules there. Next one I'm going to turn on is the Montana Block Management Layer. So this is our walk-in access program in Montana. A lot of states have these. I know it's more than half. I think we're over 30 states have some form of public access to private lands program. In Idaho, it's called Access Yes, I believe. North Dakota, it's private land open to sportsmen or plots. In Kansas, it's WEHA, which is just fun to say. Walk-in hunter access. They're one of the oldest programs in the country. I know the block management program in Montana is pretty old as well. So if I zoom in on a block management area, this is what all the walk-ins, if we just use that phrase walk-ins, that's kind of the colloquial term for this. We use that, if we zoom in on a walk-in, it's going to be private land. So it doesn't have any like green shading over it, like a national forest will, but it's going to have red dots and a black outline. It might have a name on it. In Montana, they all have names and numbers. And if I tap on my map, it's going to pull up information about that area. So I can see the owner of the land. I get my Montana sunrise sunset zone. If I scroll down to Montana block management areas, it tells me the name, tells me when it's open until, so January 15th here, tells me that it's active, it hasn't been closed down. If I want to find more information, I can click on these links here. That'll bring you to, in Montana, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks website. So you can see the rules and regulations for each block management area, learn more about the program. Highly recommend you do that because each of these walk-in areas, again, depending on your state, but in Montana, a lot of times they'll have specific rules. Sometimes they'll have, this area is open to hunting waterfowl, upland birds, deer, and elk, but maybe not bears or coyotes or something like that. Everyone's got different rules and regulations. So again, make sure you're doing your homework there. But that's another layer that I almost always have turned on in Montana, or if I'm in Minnesota, I turn on the walk-in access layer, whatever state I'm in. I want to back up just a little bit because we did kind of skip over this. I want to talk about querying the map a little bit. We did have a lot of questions people sent in earlier of, hey, what do all these colors mean? What's the blue? What's the brown? What's the green? The best way to find out what something is on the map is to tap on it, or if you're on your computer, to click on it. So if I go up here, I can see I've got some blue, I've got some green. They are labeled, but if I zoom out, you see some of those labels disappear. If I just tap on that blue piece of land there, I can learn more about it. I can see that state of Montana land. I get the county. That was another question people had was, hey, I have to report what county I harvested a deer in, or we have certain quotas by county or different limits by county, things like that. If you tap on the map, it'll tell you what county you're in there. Gives me the acreage, gives me the hunt unit, different things like that. Tap on the green, Lolo National Forest. Tap on this kind of yellowish brown, Flathead Reservation, tribal lands there. Okay, so if you are ever looking at something, even if it's private, I can tap on a piece and it'll tell me who the private landowner is, what their tax address is, how many acres that parcel is. So that's helpful if you're trying to make a phone call to get in contact with somebody of, hey, I shot a deer, it ran onto your land. Is it all right if I go, go trail it or go drag it out? If you're before the season asking for hunting permission, things like that. You've got a name and you've got the tax address. So that's not the address of the parcel necessarily. It may be if that's where the landowner lives and that's where their taxes and everything are sent to. That's the address that we give you. So you may have a field out in the middle of nowhere, no houses or anything on it. The address that you see when you tap on it is not the address for that cornfield, for example. It's the address for the owner. If you wanted to send a letter or you wanted to do a Google search for a phone number, look in the white pages. That was a question we got of phone numbers, why we don't have them in the app. Largely, it's just out of respect for the landowners. You can imagine if you're a landowner that's got a lot of, you name it, deer, elk, turkey, pheasant, whatever, you can imagine how often you might be getting phone calls during hunting season. I heard of a rancher down towards Bozeman by the Bridger Mountains that said a lot of times during elk season, he'll get 80 to 100 phone calls a day of people asking for permission. For me, that would get a little old. So you do have to do some homework. There are times, where I'm like, man, it'd be sweet if I had that person's phone number right now. Granted, that also gives their phone number to everybody. So it still kind of keeps that playing field level as far as if you're trying to get access to a place. But I've been able to find names by doing a Google search, by finding a LinkedIn profile or things like that to be able to get a hold of somebody, or just using the good old phone book to ask for permission or something like that. So that's querying the map. You can query just about everything on the map just by tapping on it. State parks, we have recreation sites. So tell me there's a picnic area there. You can do that for boat launches, things like that. All right, moving out of our state layers, we're going to go through these other folders a little bit quickly. There's a lot to these. Being as this is a 101, we don't have the time to go super deep into all of these different folders. After the first of the year, we're going to start doing monthly onX deep dives. And so we're going to do, for example, one of the deep dives we're going to do is on the trees, crops, and cover folder, where we're going to spend a half hour, 45 minutes really diving deep into this data. Interest of time here so that we're not here till midnight. Just going to do a real quick once over. The trees, crops, and cover folder shows you, just like the name says, mostly tree and crop data. You can turn it on if you want to know more. You can always tap view options. There's a little blurb at the top of every layer. It's going to tell you what that layer is. The one that I always have turned on is the timber cuts. That one is going to show me logging information on national forest only. So if you're looking for it, I've had this question where somebody's like, hey man, I'm in Wisconsin. I want to see the logging data, but I'm not seeing it listed under Wisconsin. It's a national layer. That's why it's in these nationwide folders. So timber cuts I turn on, and historic wildfire is another big one. We hear from folks quite a bit. When I turn on the historic wildfire layer, so again, I apologize if I'm going too fast. I'm just tapping this button here to turn these off and on. You can see how my map changes. This is going to show fires going back to, I believe it's 2012, showing wildfires. Again, this is mostly a Western landscape thing, but it's super popular for finding morel mushrooms, deer hunting, elk hunting, things love to hang out where these old burns went through because they get that fresh growth, those fresh green grasses and forbs coming up. So this is a fire that happened in 2017, kind of south of Missoula here, the Lolo Peak fire. You can see it was quite big. Again, if I tap on it and scroll down, it's going to tell me Lolo Peak fire, 53,800 and some acres, 2017. And as a fire gets older, the color changes. If I scroll down here just across the Idaho border, you see there was one from 2022. It's more of a darker orange. Then they'll go to more of a yellow, kind of a beige color. And then eventually they do drop off if they're more than 10, 11 years old. So that's the trees, crops, and cover in a nutshell. Like I said, there's a lot more to it, especially with the crop distribution and the tree species. Take a look at those if you're interested in them. We do have specific videos on our YouTube channel talking about them, as well as FAQs. It's just a bit beyond the scope of this class right now, being as this is a 101. It's a little bit more in-depth. Moving up to our roads, trails, and rec folder, right above trees, crops, and cover. Couple of these are going to be turned on by default. I believe it's the trails and the recreation sites should be turned on automatically. The ones that you see turned on right now are the ones I always have turned on. Trail slope, trail mileage, motorized roads and trails are the ones I turn on in addition to trails and recreation sites. Especially this motorized roads and trails one is one that I find, I've got friends who use onX a lot and hunt a lot that don't know about this layer until I show it to them, and they're usually pretty amazed when they realize what it shows. So if I zoom in, just going to zoom in on some Forest Service here. You can see some of these lines look a little bit differently. These all show trails and roads. Some of them are more what you'd call maintained roads, and some are less maintained. So some of these kind of dotted white lines here on the Forest Service, these are trails that existed at one point. They may or may not be passable by a car right now, but they were put in most of the time when logging was taking place in these areas. Once that logging's done and the company pulls out of there, these roads aren't maintained anymore, at least not until the next round of logging goes through. So these are great for foot traffic. A lot of times easier walking because they're flattened out versus side hilling, but don't necessarily count on them being open for vehicle traffic. The ones you can generally rely on for vehicle traffic are these purple ones. Now, this data comes to us from a government source, so it is basically just a public lands data source. You're not going to see many of these on like your state lands because it's a national data source we get these from, and it's not going to show them very much on private lands. But these are your motorized roads and trails. So these are bigger roads. They're typically more maintained, kept open for vehicle travel. If I want to find more information, I'm going to tap on the road. If I expand this menu, I should explain this too. So when I tap on something, you see I get this kind of half menu. All I'm doing is tapping on the top part with my finger and dragging it up. You can see more information. I see on the motorized roads and trails section here, it gives me the name of the road, the ID number, the length. The important stuff is the accessible by and the open dates. Accessible by is going to tell you if there's a width restriction on this road. So some of them are going to be just for dirt bikes. It will say that on there, that it's just a dirt bike trail, or it's just a 4x4. It's got like a 50th width restriction on there. This one says overland high clearance 4x4 side by side. So overland is going to be like a passenger vehicle, like my Suburban or a pickup truck or something like that. High clearance 4x4 is going to be more of a specific built, if you've got a Jeep with some aftermarket gear on it, aftermarket parts on it, or, Tacomas are popular. You drive a Tacoma, right?
I do.
Not to dox you or anything, but, maybe you need some more specialized equipment because the road's a little more rough that my Suburban might not make it down. And then the open dates. So that's going to tell you a lot of times, especially in Montana, a lot of places in the West, they close certain roads at different times of year. Sometimes that's just because, hey, we got a lot of snow and this isn't going to be passable no matter what. Very commonly in Montana, they will correspond with hunting seasons. And various states do this. Some don't do it at all. Some do it like Montana, where they will close, a certain section of them will close in early September when our archery season starts. Another subset or section of them will close when rifle season opens, and then some will close right after rifle season. So they close that for protection of animals, to kind of give them a place to have a little bit more of a sanctuary. And then a lot of times they will keep them closed throughout various dates in the spring, especially if it's like an elk calving area, right? So that the elk cows and calves aren't disturbed at a particularly vulnerable time of the year. They keep those roads closed until the calves are a little bit older, things like that. Or some of the snow melts, they're able to get to higher elevations, more of that country opens up. So I've been caught by this. It's been a couple of years, but in my younger, more foolish days, I was going to go bear hunting to a spot, drove out there and the gate was closed. I'm like, man, what the heck? Why can't I get up here? Pulled up onX, tapped on the map. I saw, oh, this doesn't open until May 16th. And it was, April 30th or something like that. So double check that before you head out. Make sure that a road is open, calendar wise, seasonally, make sure it's in the open dates, and then make sure that your vehicle is allowed on the trail and that your vehicle is, likely to make it up and down the trail. Speaking of trails, more of our foot traffic trails. I'm just going to zoom over to Mount Sentinel here on the edge of Missoula. You can see these trails all have different colors on them. That is my trail slope layer. So that is going to give you at a glance a look at how steep a trail is. If I turn on my hybrid map, it gives you a better sense of what we're looking at here. So right here, kind of in the center, this trail is green. That's pretty flat, not a whole lot of elevation change. If I go over to the spine of Sentinel here, it's red, pretty steep. So that's just an easy way to tell at a glance kind of what's coming up ahead of you on a trail. You might say, hey, this is great. It's really steep. That's going to keep other people out of there. That's where I want to go. On the flip side, you might say, I don't really want to hike up that steep of a mountain right now. I'm going to go for an area that's a little bit less steep. So I think that basically covers the roads, trails, and rec, at least on a base level here. Got a couple more folders we're going to go through real quick. Land and access. Wilderness areas should be turned on by default. That one is going to show you those federally designated wilderness areas. So if I zoom out, here's the Rattlesnake Wilderness north of Missoula. You can kind of see it's got a hash mark across the top of it. Might be a little bit difficult to see. The Bob is easier to see. There we go. Now you can see the Bob Marshall Wilderness Complex there. You can turn that off if you want. I typically leave it on. If I was going up to the Bob or going to a wilderness area, I might want to turn it off just to get a more clear view. But otherwise, I leave that one turned on. Another one I leave turned on is the Fish and Wildlife Service hunt areas. That one is going to show you mostly wildlife refuges. So here's an example of one south of town. So this one is useful for a couple reasons. It's going to show you areas where hunting is and is not allowed. So in this region here, or this refuge, you can see that spot in the middle where there's no hunting allowed. You can see the rest of it. Most of it is open to hunting, but it's got special regulations. It's got different zones. Some refuges will have, like I know one back in Minnesota where I grew up, it had like an A zone, a B zone, and a C zone. And they all had kind of different rules and regulations as far as what was allowed in what zone. Some only allowed hunting on certain days of the week, things like that. Just like this one, you can see on the southern end, there's a waterfowl zone, and the rest of it is archery zones. The only thing you can really hunt on this refuge is deer with archery equipment and waterfowl. And they've got different rules for different days of the week. So again, what I would recommend, tap on the map, scroll down, click that more info where it says visit website. That'll take you to the Fish and Wildlife Service website, take you to this refuge's rules and regulations. So you can see what you need to do if you have to sign in. This one has, you know, kind of set blinds where you have to check in and out of a blind, things like that. Every one of them is different. A lot of refuges allow hunting and fishing. So take a look at that. Might be another spot, you know, where you can go out where you might not have gone before. All right. Our final layer collection here is the current conditions. The big one in here is the active wildfire layer. Not so much in December, but June, July, August, September, October, we have a lot of wildfires, particularly in the western part of the country. Let me see, I can find a couple here. What I'm looking at is this red icon that looks kind of like a flame. If I tap on this fire, it's going to give me information about it. It's going to give me the name. You see this one starts with RX, means it's a prescribed burn. Largely, that's what you're going to find this time of year is people doing like a fuel reduction burn or things like that. Maybe a habitat improvement, depending where you are. If this was not a prescribed fire, if it was a true wildfire, you would see a perimeter around this icon showing the perimeter of the fire. It would be highlighted as typically red, correct? Yep. We've changed the styles a couple times since I've been here. But it'll show you kind of the perimeter of that fire. If I scroll down in the menu, you see there where it says onX last checked. That means when we last checked our data source. So whoever the managing agency for the fire is, they report on these fires. They'll tell you where a fire is burning. The big one is that perimeter of just how much has been burnt and where is it currently burning, and then how much it has been, what's the word I'm looking for? I've been talking too much. Contained, how much it's been contained. So this is a prescribed burn, so hopefully it's all contained, it's all under control. But we last checked today. We check multiple times a day. We check our data sources to update it. You can see they last updated it a week ago. So we will show the best information that is available to us. It may be outdated by a week because the managing agency hasn't updated it since then. For a prescribed burn, not as big of a deal. For wildfires, they typically are a little bit better at updating them, particularly if it's one that might be posing a threat to people or property. But you'll see oftentimes we'll have updated on September 1st, and the source hasn't updated it since August 29th or something like that. So it does kind of give you an idea of, hey, this is what onX is showing. Things might have changed, in the last couple of days. But that's the best data we have, and that's what you need to use to make your decision on, hey, maybe we need to pop smoke and then go to a different area. I've heard that used before.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We need to say, hey, let's pull up our tent stakes. That makes more sense.
Oh.
So as you get confused with the fire, pull up stakes and move to another area, or hey, looks like they've got it contained and we're a couple miles away. Maybe we're okay. I'm not giving anyone any safety advice whatsoever. Do not say, well, Jack said on the class that it was okay to hunt by this wildfire. I'm not saying that. You're all adults. Make the decision for yourself. As for me, I'm going to stay pretty far away.
Yeah. If I could interrupt you on layers one more time.
Certainly.
One thing we often hear about is that people either can't see the satellite imagery or there's just too much clutter on the map. It is almost always layer related.
Yes.
If it doesn't look quite right, or if it doesn't look like satellite imagery, that's a special one with the Forest Visitors map. Jump into your layers and start turning things off. And oftentimes you'll pretty quickly find the one that's going to be affecting it for you. Biggest one that we ever hear about is our Forest Visitors map, which I think is under
Roads, Trails, and Rec. I
Yep.
never use it. That's why I don't know where it is.
They're old scanned in 2D maps. It hides our imagery entirely. So often people are calling in where they're set to satellite, but it isn't showing up correctly. Just a simple jump into layers, see what you've got turned on, try and turn a couple things off. It's usually a quick fix for it.
Yeah, that one, the roadless areas and the precipitation radar
Yep.
seem to be pretty common.
Most common three by far.
I'm going to go in and turn off my wildfire because I don't need that right now. All right. So there's a lot more layers than we covered there. We are already about an hour into the class. So we are going to move on. If you have more questions about layers, check out our FAQs on the website. Also, I mean, honestly, it sounds like a cop-out answer, but the best way to learn how to use onX is to use it. The more you mess around with it, turn layers on, turn layers off, see what they do. The more time you spend in it, the more comfortable you're going to be. It's just kind of like, getting a new bow and getting better at shooting it. Sometimes you just got to shoot it, right? You can read as much as you want and watch videos. There's really no substitute for just tapping all the buttons. You can't really break anything. Anything you turn on can be turned off. So check out all those layers. And like I said, we are going to be doing some more, we're going to call them like an onX deep dive masterclass after the first of the year, where we'll go real deep into some of those. We don't have any scheduled out just yet, but keep your eyes open for those coming up.
And if you do get stumped, reach out to us. We're happy to answer any questions about layers or what you're seeing. Send us screenshots. We can answer specific questions about where you're looking to.
What was that email address?
It's help@onxmaps.com. I think we'll have it at the end as well.
Yep. All right. So another one of the most common questions we get is, how do I use this when I don't have cell service? How do I use it when I don't have Wi-Fi? What you need to do is save a map for offline use. So what I'm going to do, let's say, I don't know, where am I going to go hunt? Let's go up by Fort Peck. I've never been here. I'm just picking a spot at random. So if you're saying, oh, he's hot spotting, I got to pick a spot somewhere. I've never been to this spot, so we're picking this spot. I'm going to go down into offline maps in the lower left-hand corner. I'm going to tap that, and then I'm going to tap this button that says new map in red here. Now you can see I have a red box on my map. So that is the boundary of my offline area, or the offline map I'm going to save. I can zoom out and make it a little bit bigger. It's going to top out around 25 to 30 miles wide. It's going to be a little bit different based on your device, because the dimensions of that box are kind of based on the dimensions of your screen. So if yours is looking a little bit different, that's fine. That's normal. It depends if you're on a tablet or an iPhone or a Samsung phone and all the different models, right? But it's going to be about this size. If I go to my menu here and pull this up so you can see better, you should have a few different options for your map detail: low, medium, and high. We are changing this up a little bit. We will be adding more options in the future. You might see that on yours now. I don't think it's out to everybody. It might not even be out May have just been an employee thing I was
Not that
messing
I was
around with.
aware of yet.
All right, so yours will show low, medium, and high. I shouldn't have even said anything. I use the medium ones 90% of the time because it's going to give me a map about 25 by 35 miles. It's a pretty good size map. It's a lot bigger than our old ones. They used to be 10 miles wide, so it's more than twice the size. If I go to low, you can see I can get a pretty big map, close to 140 miles wide. The low map detail is useful. I will save basically the whole state of Montana in low maps, low resolution maps, so that I have something. It's going to show me hunt district boundaries, property boundaries, roads and trails, but the map image is going to be of lower resolution. Okay, so I use it as a backup. If I'm hunting an area and I have a bunch of medium or high resolution maps saved, and I'm striking out, I need to go to a new area or something, at least I have the boundaries and things like that so I can stay legal and stay safe. For actual hunting, I use the medium one more often. Once in a while, I'll use the high resolution, but you can see there's quite a difference in size in those. So when I go to northern Minnesota to our family deer camp, we have our deer stand set. We're basically hunting the same area every year. We're not driving around. We're not going to a lot of different spots. I'll save the high resolution because that's all I need. I know I'm going to be within that box. I'm not leaving it. In Montana, especially if I'm hunting, sharp-tailed grouse in September, we might be driving a lot to find good habitat or find good hunting areas to get away from other people. I'm going to use these medium ones, and the imagery is still really close to the high resolution. I've never had it where I've been out hunting and said, man, if I'd have just had more resolution in my imagery, I would have gotten that deer. I would have gotten that bird. It's nice to have if you know you're going to be tree stand hunting on one property, go ahead and save the high. If you know you're not going to be moving around, if you do need the bigger area, don't have any worries about saving a medium one. The imagery is right there with the high resolution. So from there, I've got it set. I can still adjust this. I'm just using my finger on the map to move it around. I'll just say, all right, there's where I want it. I'm going to name my map. This is important as you save multiple maps. If you just leave the default name on there where it has like a timestamp and the date, eventually down the road, you're going to have, I've had over 200 maps saved on my personal account before. And it's nice to be able to label them and say, I went on a sage grouse hunt this year. I saved like 10 maps. I just labeled them all sage grouse 2023. So I knew, all right, my area where I'm chasing sage grouse, spoiler alert, I didn't get one. We'll have to go back next year. But I saved them all, so I know, all right, I've got maps for this area. They're ready to go. They're downloaded. I'm good. I save, I'll either name my maps if it's a specific hunt. I did the same thing for my mule deer hunt, mule deer 2023. If it's an area that I hunt consistently, like around Missoula, I typically name them after like a mountain range or a feature, a hunting unit, a river, something like that. For this, I'm just going to write not Fort Peck North. And I like to do that where I'll go Fort Peck North, Fort Peck South, Fort Peck East, West, so that when I list them alphabetically, they're all close together versus going like North Fort Peck, South Fort Peck. They might be jumbled around more. I'm going to hit save, and that's going to start saving. You can see down below it's downloading right there. Once you have your map saved, it'll be listed down below here. You can see this is a test account. A lot of mine just have kind of random nonsense names there. If I close out of this menu, you can see on my map now is a green box. It's a little faint right now. Once it finishes downloading, it'll be more of a bright green. That is letting you know where you have saved maps. If I zoom out and move to other parts of the state, you can see those other areas where I have those green boxes saved. So that's a way to tell at a glance, oh, I'm going up here. I want to go hunting. Do I have a map? Yep, got one. I'm good. Once a map has been saved, it'll have this green check mark next to it. I'm going to do something right now just to to show you what it looks like if a map isn't saved on your device. So this one that says MN test. If I tap on it, it's going to bring me to that map in Minnesota. You can see it looks a little different than the map next to it. The one on the left is green, it's downloaded, it's good to go. The one on the right has like a candy cane stripe. It's Christmas season, it looks like a candy cane. When you see a map that has that red and white border on it, that means the map data is not downloaded onto your device. Maybe you saved it on your phone, but now you're on your tablet, or you saved it on your computer and now you're on your phone. Maybe you got a brand new phone and you re-downloaded the app. None of those maps are going to transfer over automatically to that device. So if I go into not map layers, I go into offline maps, I see this one doesn't have the green check next to it. It's got an arrow pointing down. That means it hasn't been downloaded to this device. If I tap that arrow, it's going to start downloading it. So like I said, there's a couple ways you could find yourself in that situation. Very commonly, if I go get a new phone, I got to re-download my maps onto that device. The nice thing is the app remembers where you have maps downloaded. So it'll remember that boundary, that box. It just won't download all that data because you have to do that yourself. That's not something like when you get a new phone. It's not like your pictures. We can't transfer it over, unfortunately. Maybe in the future, but for right now, they don't automatically transfer. Or if you have two devices, if you have a tablet and a phone, you save your offline map on your tablet, you then have to go to your phone and download it before you head out of service or something like that. The other thing you can do, I just did this today. I went and did all of those sage grouse maps I talked about earlier. I removed them from my device because it's December now. I'm not going to need them until at the earliest next September. So what I did, for example, this bottom map here that I didn't put a name on, I'm going to tap on it. I'm going to tap on, I should be specific, tap on those three dots on the right-hand side. It's going to pull up this menu here. I'm going to tap remove from device. And the reason you might do that is if there's maps you know you're not going to need for a while, but you want for later, you can remove them from your device to free up storage space. And then when you need them again, you just go back in and re-download them. So I do that quite frequently, especially for, you know, those one-off trips that I make once a year. My maps around Missoula, where I might be just out for a hike or I hunt more frequently, I leave them on there all the time. One more thing to mention with offline maps, you see some of these say update available, like my one that says Bob Marshall. I tap on it, brings me over there. If I tap this green check mark, that's going to start updating it. Another way to update it, if I go to this one where I said name your maps, tap on the ellipses, those three dots, I can hit update there as well. You're going to see update available pretty often on your map. What that means is we've updated some data in that area. Most commonly, it's going to be land ownership information has changed. It could be, you know, when hunting districts change, typically that's in the spring in most states, we update that data. Anything that has changed in that area, any data that has been updated, it'll show that update available on that map for you. My recommendation is do these updates when you can. Do it when you have Wi-Fi, when you have kind of nothing else going on. You're sitting at home on the couch watching TV. Go in and update those when you think of it. It's not critical that you do it all the time. You can go days, weeks without an update. Of course, it's better. The more often you update it, the more updated your information is going to be. But if you've got a map saved and you're like, man, I'm not going to use that map for a couple of weeks, don't sweat it. Update it when you're going to use it. If you're, you know, heading out hunting Saturday, Friday evening, go in and update them, or Friday morning, something like that. Do it when you have Wi-Fi. They will update, they will download over cell service, but typically better performance, a little bit faster on Wi-Fi usually. If you forget to update and you're Saturday morning, you're heading out duck hunting, you're like, oh man, it says update available. Don't sweat it. That map's still going to work. Go hunting, you know, update it when you get back. Don't let that keep you from going out into the field. It's just a good thing to remember to do every once in a while. But again, It just means that something has been updated there. Most often it's private land ownership changes. And most of the time that's a name that has changed. It's more rare that boundaries change than names. So update when you can, but don't sweat it. If you're heading out, you see update available, your map's still going to work. Offline maps, anything I forgot?
Yeah, just one quick thing, if you want to scroll back up to the top.
Sure.
Nice thing too is you can actually update all your maps at once. I often do this early in the season when I haven't been to a lot of these spots in a year. I didn't offload them, so they're just a full year out of date. Directly across to the right from where it says offline maps, you've got that same icon with those 3 dots. And if you click on that, it has an option just to update all. That's going to go through, schedule each one, so it'll do them one at a time. And depending on the number you have, this is going to take a while. Usually when I do it, I just throw my phone on my desk, forget about it for an hour while they're updating, but gets everything ready to go. So that way for a few weeks or months, you don't need to worry about it. And they're all set for your hunts.
One last thing on offline maps, we get the question of how to preserve battery life. So when you're offline or you're in an area where there's intermittent cell service, the biggest drain on your phone typically is going to be if it's searching for a cell signal. So the way to mitigate that, what my recommendation is most of the time is to put your phone into airplane mode. You just go into your settings, you can turn it on airplane mode. That's going to turn off all cellular signal in and out of the phone. So that's going to save your battery life. That's also going to tell your onX app, hey, go into offline mode, which I'm going to do it manually right now. I'm just going to tap go offline. I can't do that because it's downloading updates. If I wasn't downloading updates, that button would turn red and it would put me into offline mode. That's going to tell the app, don't try to download map data over the cell network. Rely on those offline maps. That's going to ensure you have good performance of your offline maps. Everything's working as it should. It's also going to save your battery life quite a bit. I do this all the time. If I'm in an area where I might want to check my text or check for a phone call once in a while, I'll just pull my phone out, take it out of airplane mode. If I have service, let it connect. 5 minutes, do what I need to do, put it back in airplane mode, put the phone back in my pocket, continue on my way. So the best way to save battery life is that airplane mode. And then if I'm going to be, gone all day or maybe a multi-day trip, I carry an external power bank, battery pack, whatever you want to call it. Those are pretty commonplace nowadays. You can get them at like gas stations and grocery stores. We often get questions on brands we recommend. I haven't noticed anything that's head and shoulders above another that I've tried. I've got an OtterBox that works good. I've got a Mophie one I really like. I've heard Dark Energy make some really like badass, like tough ones that you can drive over with your truck. You pay for it, but I've heard they're really good. So I've got one from Goal Zero that's pretty good. They're all pretty good. So carry what you need to charge your stuff up for however long you're going to be gone.
One little like preventative troubleshooting step too, more so for Android users than for iPhones. When you are out in the field, opting to carry that battery pack you're going to get a lot better off than using low power mode on your phone. Is an option if you really need to conserve battery, but there's going to be some adverse effect with that on like tracking and GPS location. Those Android phones just kind of limit that ability when you're in low power mode. So try and avoid using that. Use airplane mode, bring extra batteries. That way you can still get the full function of the app while you're out there.
Awesome. I'm going to stop sharing right now. I'm going to pop over to the web map on onX. So give me one moment to pull that up. So what we're doing now is, this is how you access onX on your computer. So you're just going to go to www.onxmaps.com. You're going to see a button in the top right that says open map. It's going to ask for your email address and password. Enter that in. It's got to be the same email address and password you use on your mobile device, same one you use to set up your account. That's a source of confusion we sometimes see, where people will have different email addresses they access on different devices. You just got to use the same email address and password every time you log in. Otherwise, people have inadvertently set up 2 accounts or things like that. But once you log in, you're going to see a map here. It should look familiar. It's basically the same map we were just looking at on my iPad here. Excuse me. So when I log in, my map layers are up here. You can see I've got most of the same layers turned on. They don't transfer over. So if I turn layers on my tablet, it doesn't necessarily turn them on? Not necessarily. It doesn't turn them on my web map. That's a good thing because I use my web map mostly for scouting. And there are certain layers I use for scouting that I never use out in the field. Historic wildfires is one of those. I almost never turn that on my phone when I'm out in the field, but I use it a lot when I'm scouting to find new areas. So that's another source of confusion. If you turn a layer on your phone, it doesn't transfer to your web map and vice versa. They don't transfer over. What does transfer over are your markups, your waypoints, your lines, your tracks. So as far as marking a waypoint on your phone, it's going to show up on your computer, like this waypoint, for example. If I mark that on my phone, it'll show up here. If I mark a waypoint on my computer, it automatically syncs up with my phone. You don't have to do anything special to get them to sync. It's just as long as you have service to both of them, they're going to sync up. So first things first, let me move my picture of us out of the way here. On my computer, my tool menu is going to be in this upper right-hand corner. We're not going to be able to get to all of these, but I wanted to highlight a couple. First one is waypoints. If I tap this button that says add waypoint, you see right in the middle of my screen here, this waypoint just got added. I can go in and I'm just grabbing it with my mouse and dragging it to where I want it to be. If I want it to be in a real specific spot, I'm going to zoom in more. Now I can be more exact. I'm going to put it up on these trees here. Great. And then just like offline maps, I recommend customizing your waypoints. Even more so than offline maps, this is important. I used to mark a bunch of waypoints that I left as the default X with the default name and the default color, and I hit save, and I had a map that was full of red X's like this. 6 months down the line, a year down the line, I have no idea why I put a waypoint there. So a couple of years ago, I went through and I deleted all of my generic red X's that didn't have any information on them because they were useless to me. Something was interesting to me at some point, but if I don't know what it is, doesn't really help. So when you place a waypoint, you can make edits to it at that time. If I have it saved like this one, I'm just going to click on it. I'm going to go down to the bottom menu. I'm going to hit edit. That's where I can change the name, Jack's Secret Spot. That's right in front of full view of all of Missoula. Also not a spot that I would likely to be hunting. I'm not even sure. You might still be within city limits there. I don't think you
don't believe you can.
It says city of Missoula. I would bet we're in city limits. So still my secret spot. Maybe I'll go up there and sit and watch the sunset. I can go in and change the icon of the waypoint as well. I think we have over 90 different types right now. So you can scroll through and select the one you want. You can even do a search. So if you're looking for all the turkey icons, you can type in turkey. If I want to mark a pheasant, duck, different tree stands, stuff like that, right? I'm going to mark this one. Oh, what's a good one? I'm going to say there's a water source here. There isn't, but let's just pretend there is. I'm going to change the color. I've got all these different colors I can select. I'll go blue because it's water. I can make notes there if I want. So I will do this, especially for areas I go to year after year. If there's an elk wallow, I might make notes on what I saw September 10th, 2021. All right, now I'm back on it and it's September 20th. Now it's 2022, 2023. I'll just make notes so that I have kind of a running journal. I might make notes on, I mark a waypoint for every, big game animal that I harvest. So I'll sometimes put notes for, 2023 whitetail buck shot with my 270 out of, I guess I'll have the stand information there because I have the stand marked on a waypoint, but any pertinent information there, I just like to put on there. I'll put photos. If I take a picture of the old grip and grin with the deer, I'll attach a photo there. Anything you want. those are my downloaded pictures. I don't need none of those. But I'll do it with my phone camera, something like that. Another point of emphasis here is colors are one way to organize your waypoints. That's a question we get quite often is, man, I've got 1,500 waypoints. How do I organize them? There's no real right or wrong way to organize them. The only wrong way would be to do no organization. Everybody does it a little bit differently. I use colors for species identification. So all of my deer waypoints are the generic red. You know, I change the icon, I change the name, I make notes, but it stays this color. My bear spots are blue. My elk spots are brown. So that now I've been doing this system for a couple of years now. At a glance, I can tell that's a deer spot, that's a duck spot, that's a pronghorn spot, that's a pheasant spot. You know, after a while, it just makes sense the more you stick with it. Some people do this by year, and they'll say, all right, 2022 is all green. 2023 is black. 2024 is going to be white. Whatever makes sense to you, just kind of pick a system and kind of stick with it. If you're changing all the time, then you got to go in and change all your waypoint icons all the time. That can be a hassle. Another thing that I will do with colors is red is reserved for areas I want to check out. So it might be an area where right now I'm doing pheasant and duck hunt. I might be looking at different spots to pheasant hunt, and I'll make them all red. I know I haven't been there, and I know it's a spot I want to check out. I'll do that when I'm e-scouting for glassing points, things like that. And then when I go there, if I flush a pheasant, I'll change it to yellow because that's my pheasant color. If I don't flush anything or the spot isn't good, sometimes I will just delete that waypoint. Sometimes if I want to make sure I don't go there in the future, I might make it black and put, you know, hey, walked for pheasants, didn't flush anything, didn't look like good habitat. Something like that. So you can kind of use these different colors to help work for you and help you to save some time, to make you more efficient. That's the word I was looking for, efficiency. So I'm just going to save this one right now. You can see there's some other options on waypoints. For more information you can put on there, I'm going to start with waypoint radius. If I click on that, I can set a radius around this waypoint. So the question I see most often that kind of pertains to this is, hey, we have like setback rules or safety zones around occupied buildings where you have to be more than, let's say, 150 yards from an occupied dwelling to discharge a firearm or to hunt. I can apply that radius. Let's pretend there was a building here. Now I know I've got this 150-yard radius around that dwelling. I know I can't discharge a firearm in this zone unless I have permission of the landowner, something like that. So that's one use for waypoint radius. You could also say, hey, this is my tree stand. I'm not shooting a whitetail at more than 40 yards. I hit apply. Now I kind of know the area I'm covering, what's within 40 yards of that tree stand. A lot of different uses for waypoint radius. I'm sure there's a bunch that I've never thought of, but that's how you turn that on. That's how you go in and edit it. I'm just going to turn that off for right now so that we can talk about wind direction, or wind on a waypoint is what we call this internally. So how I got here, again, if you're just looking at your waypoint, I'm going to click on it. Right now I'm turning off radius. I'm tapping on wind direction. You have two options here. You can have it show the current wind, where when I apply that, I can see it's got a 4-mile-an-hour wind out of the northeast. It's another question we get. It means it's blowing from the northeast to the southwest. You can see the arrow there telling you what direction the wind is blowing. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is to show optimal wind. So let's say this was a tree stand that I only wanted to hunt on north, northeast, and northwest winds. I hit apply, and then now at a glance, I can see it's highlighted green because that's a good wind for this tree stand. If it was out of the south, this would be highlighted red. If it was straight out of the east, it would be yellow. So that's a way you can tell at a quick glance which of my tree stands, which of my duck blinds, which of my whatever has good wind, which has bad wind. The other thing you can do to see all that info at a glance, if I go over to my toolbar again, right-hand corner, I scroll down to it's the third from the bottom. It says open wind calendar when I hover over it. I'm gonna click on that. These are all the different waypoints that I have set up an optimal wind on. And it's gonna tell me at sunrise, midday, and sunset what the wind's forecasted to do. Now, this is using some kind of advanced modeling to take data from the nearest weather station, but it also pulls in the terrain and some other factors to give you a good prediction of what the wind is going to be doing on that spot. Especially like out here in the mountains, that topography can really affect what way the wind is blowing. So this should be a pretty accurate depiction of what is going on that spot. So this is super nice if you're like, man, I got 10 tree stands. What one am I going to sit tomorrow? So I can go up here, I can click on Tuesday, and I can say, let's just pretend these are all tree stands, and I want to hunt in the morning. That one's good, not so good. These two are good, this one's bad. Helps just take some of the guesswork out of it. You know, sometimes we have that paralysis by analysis. I can at least eliminate a few of them. If I'm hunting in the evening, same thing. What's good, what's bad? So waypoints are kind of one of those things where the more you put into them, the more you get out of them. You know, add different names to them, change the color, change the icon, where applicable, put the optimal wind. I do that for tree stands. I do that for some duck blinds. For my upland hunting spots, if it's a field I'm going to walk, I will often just put current wind because I'm going to hunt it no matter what. I just might enter it from a different area with my dog so that the wind is, in her nose. There's not necessarily an optimal. It's just, am I going to park on this corner or that corner and walk in? So again, no real right or wrong way. Do what makes sense to you and what works for you. What time are we at? Oh, an hour and a half already. We're going to quickly go through a couple more a couple more markups, and then we will move on to the tracker and the search function, and we will kind of wrap it up with some Q&A here. Couple more waypoints, I keep saying waypoints. A couple more markup options are the line distance tool. So that's second from the top on my tools. To measure distance, click on the map, click on a second spot. It draws a line in between, tells me how far away it is. Pretty simple. I can keep drawing lines if I want. I can draw the perimeter of something if I want. Whatever you want to do, you can save that line distance. You can change the color, just like we showed, all this different stuff, change the style of it, and hit save. And then it is pretty cool where it gives you the elevation profile. So this doesn't make quite as much sense on a circle, but let's say I wanted to know if I want to go from this ridge line to this one on a straight line, which I would not recommend. There's a road here, just walk along it. Well, let's pretend I wanted to do that. I can hit save, and it's going to show my elevation gain and loss there. Pretty cool. Similarly, we have our area shape tool. So again, top right corner, toolbar, third from the top. Now I can measure how big an area is. Similar procedure. Once I get 3 points, it'll fill in, but I can draw as many as I want. Can make whatever shape of polygon I would like. And what's cool here is once I save it, it's going to tell me the acreage. It's also going to give me the entire perimeter. So this is useful for you land managers out there. A lot of people will use this for controlled burns to highlight where they want to do a burn and then keep track of them year over year. Also, people use this for food plots quite a bit. So I might have a color-coded system. Let's say I'm going to plant some brassicas, I'm going to plant some soybeans, and I'm going to plant some corn. And I'm going to make my corn plots, I'm going to make them all yellow. I'm going to make my brassicas all green. I'm going to make my soybeans blue, whatever you want. Then I can see, what I have planted where and how that all lays out on my land. I can tell All right, this is 42 acres. It's a pretty big plot, but let's say I got a lot of land and I planted 42 acres of corn. That's more a field than a plot. But then I know, let's pretend it's 4.5 acres. All right, I got to buy this much seed. I got to buy this much fertilizer, this much herbicide, whatever, right? You can kind of tell at a glance how big of an area that is without having to go out and actually do the measurements, do the surveying, things like that. One thing on markups we didn't talk about is being able to share them. All these markups can be shared. So I'm just going to click on this waypoint here. This one right here, I just clicked on it. Down along the bottom of my menu, where I can edit it, I can add it to a folder, I can delete it, I can share it. If I hit share, I can select as many as I want to share. And then since I'm on a computer, it's going to look a little bit different. I would just copy this link. You can see it says copied. And then I would probably paste it into an email or paste it into, like we use Slack at the office. I could paste it into a Slack message. I could paste it into a Facebook message, something like that. Let's say I want to send it to Connor. He opens it up on his computer. It will ask, if once he clicks on the link, it'll open up onX. It'll ask if he wants to add that to his map. He can say yes or no. He says yes. That waypoint will be on his map. Now, he's a little bit limited in what he can do with that waypoint. He can see it, and that's about it. He can't share it with anyone else. He can't edit it. He can't change the color. He could delete it from his map, but that wouldn't change anything on mine. It's kind of like when you share a Google Doc with somebody and you give them view-only access. It's my waypoint. I own it. I control it. I'm letting him see it, but he can't then go share it with a bunch of other people, or he can't make any changes to it. So it's safe that way.
With that, from the sender's side, if you click on a shared waypoint, you can see a list of who it's shared with, and then you could select to remove people from that if you wanted to down the road. So if it was like temporarily sharing a spot with Jack, but don't want him to have it forever, once I know he's done hunting there, I could just go and remove that. It's going to pull from your account as soon as you're back on service.
Yeah. So I'm going to flip back over to my tablet here just so I can show you. It is a little bit different experience on the tablet for sharing or on the phone. And then we'll also talk about Tracker here in a little bit. So I know there's people that asked about that. So that is lagging a little bit, but if I tap on a waypoint, it's going to bring up the menu like we saw before. It's going to be the option to share. It'll tell me this is view only. I hit share item. You'll see something like this if you're on iOS. Most of the time, you're going to share it with a text message across your phone. That's what I recommend. You can email it. You can share it through Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp, whatever. Most common, you're going to text it. And since this is a tablet, it doesn't have texting. It's not shown here, but you'll see your contacts and you can choose who to send it to. Just wanted to highlight that there since most people share from a mobile device. All right. Couple more things, and we'll get to our Q&A. I'm going to ask Eli to paste the giveaway link right now. We are giving away some onX hats like I'm wearing here. So get yourself entered to win that. The giveaway is open until midnight tonight, Mountain Standard Time, or I should say 11:59 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, December 11th. If you're watching this on the YouTube channel afterwards, I'm sorry, it's no longer open, but we do giveaways in just about every class. So sign up for a future one. I'll email everybody tomorrow, all of the winners, I should say, and then we'll get it sent out. So if you're wondering if you won, you'll get an email from me before noon tomorrow, Montana Standard Time, unless I fall deathly ill and have to take a sick day or something, in which case we'll email you later. Back on my tablet here, it's kind of a markup, it's kind of not, that I wanted to talk about is the tracker. So this is the lower right-hand corner. I tap on where it says tracker. I get a menu like this. This is how you can track yourself on the map to see where you've been. If I hit start, you can see my dot turns red and the timer starts counting down. If I were walking or driving right now, my dot would be moving along the map and you would see a breadcrumb trail, like a dotted blue line everywhere I walked or drove. I do this most of the time when I'm hunting, unless I'm in a spot I know super well and I've been a ton of times, then I typically don't. But I will track myself for a couple reasons. The first being safety. If I'm going to a new area to hunt, I'm going to park the truck. I'm going to mark a waypoint at the truck. I'll change the icon to truck and all that good stuff. I'll start my tracker when I start walking. That's going to lay that breadcrumb trail so that I can find my way back at the end of the hunt. Tracks are also useful for, walking into a deer stand to mark out the best way to walk into a stand so that in the dark, if you don't want to hang flagging ribbon or put those reflective tacks or whatever, all the methods we used to use for navigating in the woods. I've done it with just an onX track before and just followed my dot from that previously laid down track. Again, if I want to share it with Connor, if I said, hey, there's deer stand up there, but follow the tracks that you don't accidentally walk into that swamp, or so that you don't walk through all the deadfall or walk through the deer bedding area and blow them out. Make sure you follow that track. I can send that to him just like I did a waypoint. It could also be used for, a safety thing where I've got that track laid out and maybe I need to send it to somebody because I need help because I hurt myself or I got a deer down, I need help packing out. Here's the track, follow this in, you'll get to me. I'll probably also send a waypoint as well, but more information can't really hurt. I'm going to stop this right now because we haven't moved anywhere. Normally, it would give me the option to save it, but since the miles are 0, we didn't go anywhere. There's no track to save. I'm just going to hit delete and close out of that. So that's the tracker. Once you save one, it will give you your elevation gained and lost. So that's another cool thing. Sometimes it's just fun to see, man, I did 10 miles today and I gained this much elevation. Sometimes it's just fun to brag about how sweet of a mountain hunter you are. I'm not one, so I don't brag too often. Tracker, anything else?
I think we should be good.
Let's talk about search and then we'll wrap this up. We often get questions on how do I search for GPS coordinates? I'm going to go all the way to the top right of my map screen above that little weather button there. We should talk about weather too. We'll do that at the end.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to tap on that icon that looks like a magnifying glass. That brings up my search. You have kind of 2 different ways you can search. You can search for a location. Now that could be a town, that could be a mountain peak, that could be Yellowstone. I have this whole list of results. I'm going to tap the top one, and that brought me to Yellowstone National Park. So that's one thing you can search for. If you have coordinates, say from a friend who doesn't use onX and can't share you a waypoint, or you're pulling them from an old GPS, or you got them from whatever, you can also search for coordinates. I'm just going to tap on, we have these examples here. The second one down gives you an example of how to type in a coordinate to search. We recommend using decimals. That's the easiest one to type in. Your first coordinate is going to be positive, and in North America, it should probably be somewhere in the, I guess it could go up to the 90s, but in the contiguous United States, in the 40s, most likely. If you type that in as a negative number, it's going to put you in the southern hemisphere. The minus is south of the equator. Your second coordinate is what screws people up. It has to be negative if you're in North America. If you type it in as a positive, that's going to put you over in Europe or Asia because it is east of the prime meridian. It's got to be west of the prime meridian. It's got to be negative. So this one here, just the generic one, it's for a spot in downtown Missoula. Just to give you an idea of how to type it in, I'm going to tap on the coordinate. There you see it pulls up my green dot there. So I can zoom in on it. I can also add a waypoint and it's going to put it on that spot. So that's a question we get a lot is, hey, I got a coordinate from a buddy. I want to put a waypoint there. That's how you do it. Type the coordinate into the search, tap on the search result. When it's pulled up on your map, hit add waypoint. It'll put it on that spot for you. And then you can go in and save it.
And one thing, I didn't get to see the whole question that popped up, but I think I know what was being asked. You don't have to put a comma between them, but you can. Either
Yep.
way with decimal format will search just fine. You
Mhm.
just do need a space between them at least.
Good point. Yep, got to have at least a space in between them. To search for landowner, the best way to search is to first move the map to the area where the landowner is. When you search for a landowner, it's going to prioritize the results that are closest on the map. So to what the map is looking at. So if I'm looking for John Smith, I'm going to hit search. You can see I get a lot of results. You see, it's basically prioritized like Oregon, Montana, Oregon. The more, if I was looking for somebody in Maine named John Smith, I'd want to move my map to Maine. If I knew they were in Portland, Maine, I'd zoom in on Portland. The closer you can get, the better your results are going to be. And also the more information you can give. So if I know John Smith's middle name starts with an R and I type in John R. Smith, that's going to give me better results. With a name like John Smith, it's pretty common. You might still have to tap on, some different results to pull up their parcel. But my advice is get as close as you can to where they live or where their land is, and put as much information in as you can. If their land is registered, for example, if you know it's John and Margaret Smith, it's under the husband and wife, type them both in. That's going to give you a better result there when you search. I think we covered search pretty well, huh?
I think so.
Awesome. So we are at 6:45. I'm going to stop sharing and we will go to our Q&A. I know we went through that kind of fast, but we try to keep these under 2 hours if we can. So let's go over some questions here. Talked about managing too many waypoints. I want them all, but most of the time they're just clutter. What I would do, first of all, do some sort of color coding is what I would do. And then to manage waypoints, this was something we didn't talk about. I'm going to share my screen one more time here. Let me get my map pulled up. Second. So what I'm going to demo here is using folders. So that's what I do in addition to color coding all my waypoints, is I put them into folders. So if I click on this waypoint here, I hit add to folder. I hit add to folder one more time. Here I have some previously made folders. I'm just going to put this one in the test folder. Now, when I go to my content up in the upper left-hand corner here, I see my folders listed. If you don't have any folders made, you just click this orange button that says add folder. I'm just going to name mine December test for right now. So that's how you create a folder. And you can see I just added this waypoint to this test folder. When I click on it, I can see all my different areas, waypoints, tracks, shapes. They're all saved into that folder. If I want to turn them all off, where I don't see them on my map, I can tap hide folder on map. Now, I didn't have many waypoints in there, so you might not notice a big difference. But if I zoom in, I know this purple tent here is in this folder. So when I hit hide folder on map, you see it disappears. So I do this with I categorize them by species. So I have an elk folder, a deer folder, a waterfowl, small game. So right now, I'm not elk hunting. I have my elk folder hidden. I was mixing up my words there. I'll hide my deer one. When it comes to spring turkey hunting, I just have the turkey one turned on. I have all the other ones turned off. So I still have those waypoints. They're not deleted. They're just hidden. And folders for me is the easiest way to turn them on and off like that.
Cool thing with that too, because I do mine similar. So I do by species and year. Waypoints can be in multiple folders. Mm-hmm. So if I have camp spots that are beneficial for both like spring bear and fall elk hunting, I put that waypoint in both. So when I go and turn off my spring bear in the fall when I'm just hunting elk, that waypoint's still there, even though it was in that folder that I turned off.
Yeah. And what else is cool is if I want to share all of my spring bear spots with Connor, I can share a folder at a time. I've got like 200-300 spring bear waypoints. Some of them are places I want to check out. Some of them are places I've been. I can hit share and I can share a folder just like I can waypoints. That way I don't have to share 300 individual waypoints. I can share one at a time. All right, a couple more questions here. Future of trail camera integration. So we didn't touch on trail camera integration in here. That's a little bit more of a 201. We do have previous classes on trail cameras. If you've messed around with the trail camera feature in the app, if you want to learn more, check out the onX Hunt Masterclass playlist on YouTube. We did a dedicated trail camera class. I believe it was early October of this year. We also have some other how-to videos. Our FAQs on the website have some more information there. But without getting too deep into trail camera integration, right now, we currently integrate, meaning you can have cellular cameras connect to your onX Hunt app and deliver pictures right to the app, which is pretty sweet. I currently have a Bushnell camera that's doing that. We integrate with Bushnell, Exodus, and Covert brand cameras right now. We are looking to add more. So they were asking about, will other brands be compatible in the future? We sure hope so. Of course, it takes two to tango. Other companies have to decide they want to work with us, but we are working on adding more brands. We'd love to have Tacticam, Moultrie, Browning. We'd love to have them all. We want everybody to integrate with the app. I don't know that every single trail camera brand out there is going to want to or be able to integrate, but we will be looking to add more. I can't really go into more detail on that, but right now, Bushnell, Exodus, and Covert are the ones that integrate. Question on utilizing the app in Canada. I promised earlier we were going to talk about that. So let me share here real quick. We'll talk about Canada and what that looks like for you folks north of the border. So if I go into my layers, and this is available on mobile as well. I go into Hunt Map Layers. Instead of a state, I'm going to scroll down to Canada. I'm going to turn that on. You see that's showing there. And as I scroll north of the border, you can see some data starting to show in Canada. We're looking at British Columbia, Alberta here. If I open up my Canada menu or my folder, you can see the different information that we have. So we are kind of brand new to Canada, so we're still building this out. We have, depending on your province or territory, some of those special draw zones, limited entry zones, like for BC. We have Canadian wildfire data lives in the Canada folder, recreation sites, parcel lines, land data. So everything works a little different in Canada than it does down here in the States. We've got your crown land for most of we should have it for every province and territory, I believe. That data is a little bit easier to get than the parcel data. So that's the thing where it's going to be highly dependent on what province or territory you're in as far as what we have for parcel data. Laws are totally different in Canada. In the US, it's relatively easy to get that private property information from local tax assessors, local county governments. Quite a bit different up in Canada. It's not as easy to acquire. Some provinces are easier than others, we're finding. So we are continually working to get more data. Some provinces you'll see just parcel lines, but not landowner names. That's actually fairly common up in Canada. So we are working to get more data. Just a whole other set of privacy laws up there that we have to work through. It's a little bit more difficult to get some of that data, but we want to have parcel data in Canada like we do in the US. So we're going to keep working to acquire that. But that's kind of nuts and bolts of what you get with Canada and how to turn it on there. I think we got time for one more here. Let's see. If I delete all my offline maps, will my account save all of my pins and tracks to reload once I reorganize all my offline maps? Good question. Something we get fairly often. The answer is yes. Your offline maps and your markups, think of them basically as separate. when you save a markup, it's not like it's saved on that offline map. It's saved on your account. You can save a waypoint in an area where you don't have an offline map and you don't have service. When you come back to service, that'll sync up. So I've done this, when I've been driving down the road, and I did this a few weeks ago. Holy smokes, there's a whole bunch of antelope in that field. Is that private? Is that public? I had an idea it was private. It turned out it was, but I put a waypoint on there. I didn't have an offline map saved there. But once I got back to service and I was able to load up my layers, I was able to pull up and say, yep, indeed, it was a private field there. So your offline maps and waypoints, markups, tracks, they don't really have any bearing on each other. So it's not like your markups are saved on that offline map. That offline map is basically a snapshot of, think of it kind of as a snapshot of your layers and base maps. Your waypoints, they're separate. I can't really think of a better way to explain that. But if you delete an offline map, it's not going to affect your markups at all. That's probably the best way to explain that. All right. And I think that's it. Anything else for the folks?
Just to plug the email one more time, if you guys do have any follow-up questions or need anything like account specific, do reach out to us. It's help@onxmaps.com, and more than happy to help you guys out.
I do want to give one plug for our upcoming classes. We do these 101s basically on a monthly cadence. That's the wrong screen to share. Come on. Here we go. We do these basically on a monthly cadence. So if you want to see another 101, we'll do another one in January. We've got some other classes coming up. We're doing a cool storytelling night with the guys from the Hushin crew, looking back on this past season, some kind of behind the scenes stuff. We'll be doing a series of application season classes with the folks from the Hunt and Fool. So if you're a person who, is applying in Western states primarily, we'll cover a bunch of those coming up. We also do a Q&A type class. It's called onX Office Hours. Basically directed by you, the audience. It's like it sounds, it's a Q&A session. So whatever questions we get in, that kind of dictates the class there. We talked about the giveaway. So there's that link one more time. Make sure you get entered in. I do want to go back. Had this out of order for some reason. If you don't have an onX membership currently and you would like to purchase one, we do have a 30% off discount for everybody in this class. This is for your first membership, for your new membership. Use the promo code app101, saves you 30%, and that does have to be used on the onX website. Google Play Store, Apple App Store don't accept promo codes, so don't try to enter it there. They will charge you full price. onxmaps.com, when you purchase on your first membership, use code app101. If you have trouble with the code, shoot us an email or give us a call, and we'll get that applied for you and save you some money on that first membership. Now I think we're done.
I think so.
All right. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us. Hope to see you on a future class. And if you're still hunting out there, hope you get after it. Hope you have some luck this season.